it's interesting to see a few empty chairs, but we're glad to have you here, and those of us who are joining us virtually, we ask you to please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye. The agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. I have one request for public comment from Kelsey McCullough.
Hello.
Hello again, Kelsey.
I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, but good evening. I'm Kelsey McCullough. I have a 4-year-old preschool student named Declan who attends the pre-K program at Liberty Peak. Declan has a severe speech delay along with other conditions that require him to have an IEP. And tonight I'm here as his mom and as an advocate for the many other students like my son who have suffered since this pandemic and the schools shutting down. I understand that nobody planned for a worldwide pandemic. Nobody planned for the governor to have to make a decision to close schools. And most certainly nobody planned that months later we still are living in such an amount of uncertainty. I've attended school board meetings and my questions have always come back to this issue. I'm a firm believer in having grace and patience in situations, and I do not know how I would handle sitting behind that desk trying to make decisions with people constantly attacking you, and all you're trying to do is figure out what's going to be best for our kids. And I greatly appreciate all the work you guys are doing. However, I am also a believer in knowing better so that we can do better, and that is why I'm here tonight. I'm a parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a speech therapist. I'm not a developmental expert. Although in March of 2020, I had to become all of those things. My child has suffered and regressed because I was trying and ultimately failing at being things I am not. Speaking with other parents in a similar situation, one thing is clear. We are constantly holding our breath through these meetings, hoping that at the end we'll have some sort of answer and a direction for our kids. I am a parent who until last week thought that this was okay and that there was nothing that could be done. I thought I was going to have to pray, cross my fingers, and wish on stars that my child would be able to go back to school where his needs could be met. However, I now know that there are actually laws in place to protect my child and others like him from being forgotten and left behind. We are experiencing a pandemic regardless of how anybody feels about the virus, about Governor Sisolak. The pandemic remains. This pandemic has forced schools to close, but it did not take away the rights of an education to help them achieve their goals. The IDA and FAPE laws stand regardless of whether students are in a physical building. Like many parents, this has left me in a world of limbo, and it keeps me up at night. We are told that an IEP stands for individual, and so we know it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of answer, and every kid is different. However, we as parents would like to have answers to the beginning of how services will look when we cannot return to school as normal. This evening, I am asking you as a parent to please provide some of those answers so that we can provide accordingly. If that answer is simply that Washoe County School District cannot provide the services that my child and other children need, I will happily take him and pay out of my pocket to go to Reno twice a month so he can receive services. I just have to know if that's what I have to do. I want, like what every other parent wants, is their child to be successful. And I just need to know what that's going to look like going forward. My son is 4 years old and in preschool. He wants nothing more than to be back with Miss Marcia and Miss Shelley and all of his friends, and I want nothing more than to be able to see him start to make those progresses on his IEP and be able to achieve and continue his love of learning. I am simply a parent. I'm not a teacher. I can't be his teacher, his therapist, and a disciplinary figure without failing somewhere along that line. And that's where I look to you guys for answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. And I talked to Mr. Smith before this, seeing I know you've been here multiple times, and they're having a meeting on Thursday, and there will be some great answers for you on Thursday.
I just was kind of nominated to.
Oh, thank you, and we
Say
appreciate you coming back. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your words and your concern for your student and all the students with IEPs in the district. Thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment? Please.
Well, on behalf, I'm Ty Tabor, teacher, 5th grade at Flagview, and I just want to say thanks for making this decision last week. My team and I, we were actually in our classrooms, and now that we have a direction, we feel that we can get this year off to a great start. So thanks for making the decisions that you did last week. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor, and thank you for working with your team to make good things happen. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment? If you're shy and you want to make one later, we promise we'll give you time at the end. Item 2.1 is.
Madam Chair.
Oh, please. Yes.
I'd actually like to make a comment. You know, I have received some input from the public, and it's regarding the open meeting law. And while technically last week's agenda fell within the parameter of what was on the agenda, it was really misleading. It was misleading to parents, and what's made me angry is it was misleading to me as an elected board member. I had absolutely no idea that that was going to be the subject of discussion at that meeting. And that truly is unacceptable for this board to not notify the board members as to what's going to be discussed in the board meeting. So that's the first thing. The agenda should have been clarified. That agenda should have said that we would be discussing the possibility of changing from the hybrid model approved by the governor's office to an online option. That would have been the proper method for putting that on the agenda, because parents were unaware. They were getting, the day before that meeting, they were getting notices that their kids were going back to school and what group they were in. So parents were completely unaware that it was even going to be discussed. So, you know, because had I been aware of the real agenda, I also would have had a notebook of questions in front of me to ask. And some of those I'm going to just put out there right
Really?
now.
You're taking exception with my
Okay,
notebook
you
of
know what?
Hold on,
questions?
you two
Really?
stop.
This is public comment. You're not public
Madam
comment.
Chairman, can you
Madam
take
Chairman.
control of this
Yes,
meeting, please?
hold on, I'm gonna pause both of you.
Well, she
and-
should, because you're not
Hold on,
public
Mr. Seisler.
comment.
I'm gonna pause both of you, and Candace, I'm gonna hold off until we get to the board member items for these questions, because that's the appropriate place for the board members to speak, and I appreciate,
Okay, well, it
your
goes
comments.
directly to
Mhm.
the public,
absolutely.
because this is coming from
Yeah.
parents to me.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just going to let you know we have a place, item 4.2, where it is items from board members. And so we will definitely readdress your concerns during that period.
Because I have some other ones too, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem. And I will also point out, just for those who are concerned about the open meeting law, you know, we received training in the open meeting law, and I know when the agenda gets put together, it goes through our legal team to make sure that it is appropriate. Dr. Robinson does a follow-up after the meeting to make sure that there were no violations, and in this case, there were no violations of the open meeting law. I understand that some people think we should have been more specific, and that's certainly something we can look at in the future, is being more specific. Cassie Gray, who helps put the agenda together, is going to do a training through board docs, which you guys all, the agenda is put on board docs. And she's gonna do a training and work on improving our agendas. So just so everyone knows, We did receive some feedback in that regard, and we definitely want to make the public as aware as possible of what's happening in a meeting. And in that case, everything was still on the table. And we had discussed that in previous meetings, saying everything is still on the table. And as board members received other feedback, there was still all that discussion to be had. So we will absolutely, Member Wines, we will deal with your concerns when we get to item 4.2. And if there are other board members who have concerns, obviously that's also the appropriate place to deal with those. So right now we will move to item 2.1, receive, review, and possible approval of policy DDP, time reporting requirements for federal projects for possible action. Dr. Robinson, would you like to talk to us about this one?
Yes, actually, if Mrs. Norton is available and joining us this evening, she may be able to fill us in on the.
Dr. Robinson, this is actually a policy out of the grants office.
Okay, that's Cassie, I'm so sorry.
Okay. So basically, we need a policy just for any employee that's receiving federal funds that's working under the grant, just to show that their time that they've worked, they're certifying that and it matches accurately with their time card. So that's what this policy is, and then it also lists some procedures so that way employees can easily follow it.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on this policy?
Was this something that came out earlier in the year and we've just been able to get caught up with presenting this now?
No,
And that-
we've always followed these procedures, but the Department of Education is mandating that we actually have a policy, so when we get audited, we're following our own policies.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Move to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and that policy is approved. Item 2.2 is receipt, review, and possible approval of the Title IX policies, AC, equal educational opportunities, equal employment opportunity, non-discrimination, and GBB 28, non-discrimination on the basis of sex under Title IX for possible action. Dr. Robinson.
So I think it was somewhere around April or May, there were some additions that were made to the Title IX laws and regulations, and we've been working with our legal counsel to integrate the changes, but mostly additions, I think, into our policies here so that we're in alignment with the new Title IX regulations.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion from the board?
And is that a change in investigation, much like the university system has to do, where the accused has rights now too?
Yeah, I think that was part of it. I don't know if Mr. Smith would be able to fill you in a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, there were sweeping changes to Title IX that our legal counsel alerted us to in the spring. We were unable to facilitate this due to those dynamics. Lots of information coming out of the Pool Pact in this regard, as well as statewide trainings by Ann Alexander, who's kind of an expert in this side of things. But anyway, all the policies have been extensively reviewed by legal counsel, and they represent mandated changes.
I have a question, just out of curiosity. Why the Boy Scouts of America is specifically named, it says Boy Scouts of America and then other designated youth groups. Why wouldn't they just be in with the other youth groups?
That I can't answer. Candace, I don't know why that was picked out as an example of that type of a group. Not sure.
Okay, thank you.
And if we say no to these changes, Mike, does that impact federal funding for the district?
Well, there's lots of implications. Obviously, this is a first reading of the policies for the board. So if you have questions or concerns about language within the first reading, please bring those to our attention. We can rerun it through legal counsel, those questions that you may have, get a response from legal counsel, and if we're able, and if legal counsel is able to make requested changes based on your input, we can have them do so and bring it back for a second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there other questions or concerns that you'd like to have reviewed? How, go ahead, please.
Are you the Title IX officer then for?
No, there was a part of the sweeping changes to Title IX included establishing different people designated by various titles. For example, Ray Smith is the Title IX coordinator. Mr. Walls is the Title IX investigator. I function as the appeal that sits above them, and Dr. Robinson functions as the person above me with regard to all Title IX issues that could matriculate through the system.
Any other questions from the board? How would you like to proceed?
Where are our options?
Well, the options are approval, failure, or a second reading, I suppose. If there are questions that you'd like to have reviewed, we can bring it back for a second reading.
The only question that I may have is, if legal counsel has gone through and looked at it, have they definitely gone through it with a fine-tooth comb? Or this just getting pushed down from the feds to us?
Well, the root of the changes are federally mandated, but as I said, this started before Dr. Robinson was approved to be the new superintendent of schools. We had legal counsel directing correspondences to my attention that, hey, we need to get on board with these adoptions and get our policies revised ASAP, because they will be soon to be non-compliant with regard to those mandates. And so, like I said, there were some delays accompanied with the search and hire of the new superintendent, the COVID shutdown that occurred in the spring, and once those two things happened, we were able to make headway on these revisions. And like I said, legal counsel has reviewed it extensively.
I think it originated from a Supreme Court ruling, didn't it? The revisions, that's where the changes originated. The Supreme Court ruling this spring.
Other questions from the board?
So is the investigation process, Mike, is that a closed door process, or how does that happen?
What happens is the district would receive a discrimination complaint. If it was classified under Title IX, I would assign Mr. Walls to conduct an investigation into the complaint. When that was complete, it would come to Mr. Smith, that Mr. Smith, and he would take the facts and circumstances that came out of that investigation and render a ruling on whether there had been a Title IX violation. If that was the case, we would collectively take action to remedy whatever the circumstance was that caused the Title IX violation and bring it into compliance. In circumstances where an investigation would determine that it's the district's belief that there was no Title IX investigation, then that would leave it up to the complainant to file a Title IX complaint with the EEOC or EOC, and then they take that over and usually request documents, etc., and conduct their own investigation into the complaint. Sometimes that can, if they find, if they side with the complainant, EEOC can require the school district to implement things to remedy the circumstance that was at the root of the complaint.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I move to adopt A/B Board Governance and Operations Policy.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the board? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and those policies are adopted. Item 2.3 is receipt, review, and possible approval of the dual credit course list for school year 2021. Dr. Robinson, got some words for us on that one?
It's quite an extensive list that we have available through our partners at JBC. And we're a well-attended program, and I was looking at it for the first time. I was really impressed with the number of offerings that we have. If you have any questions, I'm sure Chris would be able to, Mr. McEnany would be able to.
All right, any questions from the board, comments?
I move to approve the dual credit course list for school year 2021.
Second.
Thank you, we have a motion and a second, any discussion? I will just ask this out loud, and this is related to, but not exactly with the 2021. I know I've had parents of seniors and some other people ask if there's a possibility we can extend the dual credit classes for this fall, extend the deadline, which would have been back in May, even into the end of this week, for more students to be able to do dual credit. Mr. McEnany, do you know if that's possible to make that extension and that exception for this unusual time?
So at this point, Dr. Robinson and I are looking at any eventuality where that could come of. We recall at the last board meeting when Mary Doucette was here, she actually spoke to that about the closing and that deadline being set by both entities. So we would have to get GBC on board, as well as all of our schools and our counseling departments. I don't want to speak for the schools right now. However, I would imagine that should we attempt to do something like that, there would be issues at the school site amongst the counselors and the administrators, that once you open up that window, because someone missed the deadline back on May 29th, and then if we close it again, let's say we open it up for a couple days, what if someone misses it then? Do we open it up again? And this is despite multiple contacts with both email, calls, from schools back in May. So again, the enrollment is strong. We have lots of kids doing dual enrollment, so it's something that I'm sure, should the superintendent direct, we could look at that. It may cause more issues than it solves, however.
I wonder if the students who are enrolled, who perhaps missed that deadline, they're enrolled in dual enrollment but not dual credit, so they already have that on their schedule, if it would be possible to extend just the dual credit to those, even if it's just the seniors, so they could have more opportunity. But I would really like to look at that and reach out to the school sites or whatever we need to do and make that a possibility, because this is gonna be a very strange year for our seniors in particular. I mean, all of our students, but those who wish to, really improve their learning and get more college classes under their belt before they graduate, I think it would be a great thing to look at. I'd like to have other thoughts from the board if anyone else has thoughts. And if I'm the only one that has had parents reach out to me about that, then, you know, that might be just fine. But I would certainly like to see that extension available, at least for the classes they're already enrolled in, if nothing else.
So one thing I have a question is dual enrollment does not automatically mean dual credit.
Correct.
So we are talking about an extensively different list of classes. So even if we extended that dual enrollment to dual credit, it may not encompass classes students are already enrolled in.
I actually agree with Mr. McInerney that if you start extending the date, you know, when does it stop? That would be my question, and it's unfortunate that parents didn't get that done, but I agree that, you know, it'll just turn into a extension until.
Were there any parents that enrolled their students in the program back in May?
An extensive amount, yes. I can get those numbers for you directly, but yeah, we saw no drop off in dual credit enrollment from school year 1920 to this year at all. And every year we have a few kids that miss the deadline and come around this time of the year. You know, Mr. Walls is a former principal at Spring Creek High School, I'm sure he attests to this. And this has always been our policy that we're very, very sorry you missed the deadline. We encourage dual enrollment, so you still get those college credits as you move on to the next level, but the opportunity for dual credit has passed.
Thank you. Well, I have addressed the needs of parents who've talked to me, so thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on approval of the dual credit course list for school year 2021? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and that list is approved.
And I abstain,
Okay,
just because they're my.
sorry, and
employer.
abstentions.
Yeah.
There you go, thank you. Mr. Zeidler will abstain. Item 3.1 is our consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a correction to the minutes.
Okay.
Under, I don't remember which one it was exactly now, but under the motion to pass the reopening plan, I actually voted nay because based on the ABABA scheduling.
All right. Thank you. Any other discussion? Did we have a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Thank you for that correction, Candace. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and our consent agenda is approved. Item 4.1 is a report from our NASB director.
It's been eerily quiet. We've got a legislative committee meeting tomorrow night that I'm on, and to discuss, training for new board members. I don't know if it's stemmed from something, but kind of a big change from what, and I don't know if it's I'm gonna find out tomorrow. I'll have a better report next time if it's the state trying to change what the first and third year board members that have to receive so many CPO credits, and they're wanting to make some big changes to it. Fines involved and public shaming. So, but I'll have a better report in 2 weeks on what's going on there.
Okay. Hooray, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Rides. Any guidance for our NASB director? All right, we'll move on to item 4.2, items from board members. Mrs. Wines will give you the floor because we know you've got some items.
Okay, so I'm just going to read from the open meeting law. And it says it requires the agenda for the meeting consist of a clear and complete statement of the topics to be considered during the meetings. So in my opinion, the agenda item from last week, the 18th of August, was not clear and complete. It was very broad and vague. So I still have a ton of questions, and now we've moved on, and this isn't even on the agenda anymore. So some of the questions that I had were, why didn't we know? Many of the people who testified last week were actually on the reopening committee. So why didn't we know until now that the social distancing parameters could not be met? And were any attempt made for students in the modulars to maybe move to other potential areas of the school, like auditoriums, gymnasiums, other unused rooms in the school that might have had the capacity? I also have big questions about, are the bus drivers and we hired extra janitorial staff, as far as I know, bus drivers, SROs, and other non-essential personnel going to be furloughed during the quarter? That's a big question I have. And are the substitutes going through the same training as the teachers? Because if a substitute now has to move into a position that includes the online only training, are they going to be able to deal with the technology and all of the parameters that the teachers are learning about in online only? Because teachers are still going to get sick, they're still going to take personal days, and substitutes are going to have to know exactly the same thing that the teachers are learning. And then I just want to say that I was under the impression that communication and community relations were priorities of this board. And that last meeting made it clear to me that there's a lot of work to do in this department. The parents were receiving emails outlining in the group their children would be attending school in the day before the meeting. So, I feel like this board has failed in communication, not only to parents, but to an actual elected board member. Then I also have questions, moving on from that subject. Well, I'd like to get an answer about furloughing of any of the district personnel, because we actually are not going to be in school.
No, there's not. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I've outlined, and as I get to the superintendent report, and that I've shared a document that, which is a guide that we put out really with the intent of giving some guidance and structure for our administrators. And we address roles and responsibilities of a number of positions. And
yeah, I did read that. So when we get to that, I'll ask you more questions about that then. But the other thing I had is, are we ever going to get a budget? Do we know if we have any money? I mean, this is the serious question. And if we're not getting anything from the governor's office on what our budget's going to be, then how are we paying for all of this? Do we have any idea how much we're going to be paid from the state?
I've not received that information as far as working with our CFO.
So I think we need to start demanding answers from the governor's office. We need to know some sort of number that we have to work with here. And that does go to the furloughing question that I had, because if we don't have the money, I don't know how we're going to pay for these people to stay on the payroll when they're not working. And then the other question I had is, what is the process for filling Mr. Fish's seat? Can someone please tell me that?
Cover that, Dr. Robinson?
Yeah, so that is a board function, and basically when the board is prepared and has the discussion about that, then the board announces applications are going out, and that people may submit their names to apply for the position, and then the board that participate, and I think it's a 2-week period that it has to be available, and then once you receive the applications or the letters of interest, then the board conducts the interviews. and
So
the
what,
selection
so
is
we're
made.
talking a time frame of probably at least a month, is that correct, before filling that position?
That was about the turnaround time when I was appointed.
So will that be on an agenda soon? Because I am concerned that now we have a board that doesn't have that seventh member to break a tie vote.
When the board is prepared, we certainly will facilitate that.
And that's the will of the board, and this is a time where we could say that's what we'd like to see on the next agenda, if that's what the board would like to do. We don't vote on it, but if that is the will of the board with consensus, we could put that on the next agenda, the announcement of that opening.
I think that would be appropriate, and I think Mr. Fish would want it that way. I know we've needed to take a little time to mourn the loss of Mr. Fish. But, you know, he was a firecracker, and he'd want us to keep going.
Any other comments from the board on that?
That's all I have.
And just so that the public is aware, when we appoint someone to be on the board, after the interview process and they are appointed, they will only complete Mr. Fish's current term. So if we appoint someone, let's see, we're the last meeting in August, if those interviews took place, let's say the last meeting in September, the first meeting in October, that person would only be appointed to the end of 2020. And then the process would need to happen again. This is the legal process. Even though Mr. Fish's name will show up on the ballot and he has already been elected, that person will still have to come back to the board in the first January board meeting, or anyone else. Those applications can be open again, and we will need to re-interview and reappoint someone for a 2-year term, which will be until the next general election, and then that person or any other person who chooses can put their name on the ballot and run. So it's kind of an interesting process. We could have a board member that is appointed for just a couple of meetings, but that's how it can happen. But then when a board member is appointed in January, through the same process of notifying the public and then doing the interviews, they will only serve for a 2-year term before they need to put their name back on the ballot, or whoever in the public chooses to put their name on the ballot.
I believe that the individuals who apply also must be in the same district.
Correct. Yes, they must be in that district to apply for the position in that district.
And that district is south of the Lamoille Highway in Spring Creek and takes in Carlin?
It's sort of far ranging. What I recommend people do if you're interested in the position is go to the Elko County website. On the clerk's office under voting maps, there is a school district one. And you can kind of see, it's a very up close of Elko, but it'll give you a general idea of where Mr. Fish served.
And he was District 3.
And that will also have the precinct numbers
It does, it also has the
for
voting
that.
precinct
So
numbers.
individuals, if they know which precinct they're registered to vote in, would be able to look at that and see exactly if they're in that district. I'm not sure what was Mr. Fish's district.
Number 3, I think.
It's District 3. And obviously, we encourage people in District 3 to, if you would like to sit up on this board and be yelled at and complimented occasionally, please apply. We would love to have you. All right.
High
Any other-
risk, low reward.
There you go. High risk, low reward. That's right.
It's just the way I like it.
All right.
With Candace's budget concerns, is there any numbers on the enrollment? Because I know there's a lot of people that are gonna keep their kids at home, and that can be a significant impact to our budget. Is there any numbers on what's enrolled, who isn't gonna enroll?
The last time we looked at the numbers, we had 10,100, I think, in 67. And then,
So Josh Farmer ran additional numbers today, and right now it looks like we're down about 500 students from end of year last year, which puts us right around that 10,000 mark that Dr. Robinson just mentioned, so.
Okay.
And that's with, so I actually had our people run some numbers today. Right now, we're sitting at 335 homeschool students, so that accounts for, you know, 2 or 3/5 of those students that were missing. And there's also been extensive kindergarten, low numbers in kindergarten, where it appears that parents are just waiting a year to enroll their kids in kindergarten. So that accounts for at least district-wide, probably another 100.
Maybe that many. There's pockets. There's some of our elementary schools that the kindergartens are exactly where we expected, and some others that are maybe down 10 to 20%, but it's kind of sporadic. There's no consistency in which schools are where we expected them to be and which ones aren't.
So if you add that number of missing kindergartners in with the homeschool students, it puts us right about where Dr. Robinson mentioned we are.
And our students that enroll in NNBA, do we get state money?
Yes, NNBA is an Oakland County School District school, so it's no different than being enrolled in any other school in our district.
Okay, thanks.
And that number is sitting at 493. So a lot of kids went back to their zone schools once the board made the decision to go full distance ed. That NNBA was over 800 at one point, so.
One of the items that Candace had mentioned with regards to getting a hold of the governor's office and trying to get some semblance of what the budget is gonna look like. I think all of us need to see some hard numbers, knowing, and everything's up in the air. I realize that, and we all realize that, because we've been up in the air since March. But I do have a concern with regards to the finances that we've got coming in, even though knowing that the allocations from the state, the special session had looked at things. There's another special session, so that could be changing numbers again. And then we've got the regular legislative section, which could throw another curve into this whole thing to get exactly where we're at with 543 and all the other things that are out there that, you know, we don't know what we don't know where we're at. But I think pressure should be applied from our district to the governor's office to seek answers.
Madam Chairman, can I make a comment?
Sure.
This is Jerry, and the last information I got from NDE was that our DSA was going down and it would cost us approximately $2 million. That is the amount of the contingency I had built in. So anything that was not planned to be in the contingency should currently be covered until they do another round of cuts at the state level.
Thank you, Jerry, appreciate that. And thank you for building in that contingency. All right. Any other questions from the board?
I just want to kind of comment on some things that Trustee Wines brought up about being completely unaware of what we were going to discuss in the last meeting. I thought it was made really clear in the July 28th meeting that the distance learning was always on the table. Our commissioners have not yet submitted their reopening plan. We don't know what the consequence of that looks like. As far as I know, it still hasn't been submitted. It's late at this point. We're the only county that hasn't submitted it. So we needed to be taking that seriously, and no, we didn't know what the classrooms look like because the teachers hadn't gotten in their classrooms yet. Mr. Tavor is shaking his head because as soon as he got in that classroom and realized the reality, he got a hold of me. And I got to see it firsthand. And I mean, and I'll fully admit, I had been doing rough math over the summer, trying to figure out how we were gonna make it work. I didn't have great square footage. I didn't have great head counts. And to be honest, walking into his room, it was worse than my doomsday scenario because I had been too generous with the size of the modulars. We don't have other locations to put the kids. If we did, we wouldn't have modulars. We're a chronically underbuilt county. We're using the gyms, or the plan was to use the gyms for like rolling lunch hours, so they were gonna be occupied a great deal of the day. Other rooms, music rooms, things like that, were also going to be used to accommodate lunches. So, I mean, short of sticking them outside, I don't know what else we were gonna do. And when that meeting happened on the 28th, and every time it came up with, well, we're doing hybrid right now, as of this moment, right now. It was said multiple times. And so if you weren't thinking about that being a possibility, I mean, that's sort of remiss, because the governor's directives were coming in as we were meeting, and we know how quickly it can change, and it was causing a great amount of anxiety amongst administrators and parents. And I mean, I certainly didn't go into that meeting expecting to have a vote, but I certainly expected to have the conversation, because it needed to happen. And so, you know, I just kind of want to throw that out there, that it shouldn't have been a blindside. And it was distressing to hear from the public that a board member was telling them they were blindsided, because then I had to explain that board member shouldn't have been. We've been talking about this, and I know it was distressing to get such mixed messaging from the board. And so I just want to throw that out there.
What was distressing was that it wasn't a very clear and concise agenda item.
But we addressed that in the July 28th meeting, that we were going to have a very general agenda because of how fluid everything had become. And I mean, we left the July 20, I get it, it was really late at night, but we left that meeting knowing we had two plans. And that day we said hybrid, knowing full well the next day we might have to pivot. And, you know, I think it was prudent. It wasn't popular. Nobody was flocking to the hybrid plan. Nobody enjoyed it. But we picked it to try to appease parents and then to see if it could work. And when it started to fail, it was prudent to stop the failure there and go with something we knew we could make work. And I think the administrators and the teachers coming at that last meeting it made it super, I mean, I didn't even need to talk to them. I just needed to look at their faces and know this conversation needs to happen now. And so I don't want to be judged too harshly for that. And it's very insulting to have it implied that I violated open meeting laws in some way, when I make it an effort not to discuss pending agenda items with board members. I try to be extremely transparent with the public. I give my thought processes on things. People are welcome to call me, email me, contact me in any way. And overwhelmingly, the contact I got last week was a board member told me this was happening. And it was such inaccurate information. And then, oh, well, now you're a liar.
Fine, Tammy, I'm glad to hear your thoughts on that. But, what's inappropriate is for you to sit here and talk about hearsay from other people on what I said.
I don't know that it was you. I don't know who it was. I honestly don't. I know they were people that are in your district. That doesn't mean they spoke to you. People in Keith's district contact me all the time. People in Ira's district contact me all the time. We are not beholden to our districts. I'm just throwing it out there that somewhere a board member may have said. That might not even be true either.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, but
it's hearsay.
It is troubling when multiple people give you that same story, and then you've got to put that fire out. I mean, we talked about having good communication. That's part of it, and I communicate a lot. So, I mean, I do take exception to say, you're not communicating with your...
Well, and I would say, I have one comment about the communication, because there was a post on Facebook by a parent that basically said, the administrators or teachers are going to go in, they're going to discuss going to online only, and I discounted it. Perhaps I shouldn't have. And parents were discounting it because they were posting the agenda item saying, no, this is what the agenda says. It doesn't say anything about that. So again, we're back to a communication.
Well, and that's when I communicated with people about, because thank you parents that contacted me about that for clarification. And I said, as of this moment, we are in hybrid. That's my understanding. Things change minute by minute. And, I didn't walk in here knowing we were going to go to a vote. I don't think any of us could have known it would go tip like that hard, that fast. But I think as the administrators put up the red flags and said, we can't get any further, it's fallen apart all around. And I had experiences that day that was telling me things were falling apart. I was seeing scheduling issues just with my kid And I'd seen the trailers, and I was starting to realize the scope of what we were asking our teachers to do. And this staff will move mountains if we ask them to. They absolutely will. And they will keep moving it until we tell them to stop. And we were putting them in a position where they were gonna end up killing themselves, figuratively or literally, to accommodate our wish. And that didn't seem fair. And then on the flip side, as a parent, it didn't seem fair to ask other parents in the district who are in the position that I'm in, needing childcare, needing to juggle all this stuff, juggle it another week, be stressed about it for another week, and then maybe next week we'll decide. Yeah, that didn't seem fair either. So, you know, for whatever my blame is in what happened last week for bringing it up, I fully admit that was an emotional breakdown I had where I said, we need a drop dead date because I literally can't do this anymore. Every amount of babysitting I had lined up over the summer fell apart in one way, shape, or form, and I couldn't take it anymore. And so I said, give us a drop dead date. I didn't expect it to go to a vote that night, but it did, and here we are, and now I think it's time to move forward. Our staff seems more confident, less stressed, and now, I mean, parents have something they can hang on to and plan for in a realistic way. I mean, look at Washoe County. They made it to school 2 days last week. That's however many elementary kids needing babysitting at the last minute. How stressful must that have been for them? I'm glad that we're just out of that part of it, I guess. And that's not to say next week we might decide hybrid is for us. It's still on the table.
Well, it's not, because it's not on the agenda anymore, and it
Well,
was
if it goes
decided,
back
it
on
was
the agenda.
decided that online only for the first quarter. So clearly, I asked the question several times last week. And the answer I got is we will not revisit it until the end of the first quarter. That was the answer I got in this meeting.
All right, and that's where we're going.
Okay? I'm just clarifying, because we aren't gonna reconsider it.
I mean, I just
until
know
the end of the
everything's,
first
I mean, I
quarter.
can't imagine going less restrictive at this point, just because we are still in the red and just because our county is in trouble with the state, but, I mean, we can engage in wishful thinking, I suppose.
Thank you. Any other items from board members?
So just so I'm clear on all of this stuff, I can't make motions at meetings anymore.
Yes, you can.
Okay,
That's one of your jobs. You must do so.
that's what I thought.
However, not if it's a non-action item. You may not make a
Especially-
motion on a non-action item.
You know, I will say, right, exactly, but I will say this, you know, all of you talk about listening to your constituents, and that's what I did, and that's what I wrote in this book.
My constituents were contacting me saying, basically, we ignored the survey, because the survey, the parents wanted their kids to go back to school in person. That's what they wanted, overwhelmingly. And now they're saying that they have just been completely ignored, as usual, is the comments I got.
But you as a board member, as a trustee, have the responsibility, even though the public is saying, we want this, you have to listen to legal, right?
Well, I thought we
Because you're
had,
hanging your ass out there for a lawsuit.
but I thought we had a plan that was approved by the governor's office. It was approved by the governor's office. Our reopening committee worked with the state to make sure that it was, and our attorneys assured us that as long as we followed the governor's plan and parameters, that we would be okay.
Right, and like Tammy had said, back in July, we approved the 3 phases depending on what was happening here in the county as far as cases, right? And they would make the decision to make that a fluid situation, right? So
Well,
we
it
could
was fluid,
switch.
but we did approve the hybrid plan. And
At
At
that
moment,
time,
we said that
right.
repeatedly in that meeting. At
Right.
this moment, we're doing hybrid. And maybe that's part of the confusion is the night of the 28th, we did approve 3 plans. We had our, the new normal phase, I don't even know what to call it, but new normal where we reopened but with the new parameters. We had the hybrid and we had the distance learning. People felt ignored in the survey because they thought that the new normal plan was an actual viable option at that time, and it wasn't. That's our bad. We should have been really clear. We all want to go back to school. We don't want to be wearing stupid masks, but we have to. So here's the hybrid and here's the distance learning. And maybe at that point we should have resurveyed time is of the essence though, resources are limited. How many times are we gonna survey and say, you know, can we get you on board with this, or can we get you on board with this? Because I had a lot of parents who actually swung. They answered the survey saying, open completely, no restrictions, and they said if you were to survey them again, they would have gone distance. Because they just wanted an either or. The hybrid was not an ideal situation for them. It's not ideal for a lot of families that have 2 working parents or 1 working parent with no other parent in the household. You know, so we could have played the game all the way up until September 8th. But how fair is that to our staff that needs to teach our kids? That's my thing. My kids aren't gonna get a quality education if these people are about to have nervous breakdowns. So.
Well, and I'm just gonna say again, we need to do better at communication. And we could have, an email could have been sent out, or anything saying that, you know, administrators have concerns and we will be considering going from the hybrid to an online-only plan. That would have been a simple fix. And then everyone would have been included, including parents.
I think there's always room for improvement in communication, and I think that's something that will be ongoing and working on improving, and I think that's always a good suggestion to do better with communicating. I know we had parents that said, you know, why don't we get notification that there's a board meeting? And, you know, I don't always look online, I don't know. And so I know there was an email sent out, or I understand there was an email sent out announcing this board meeting to the whole community. We could also use a robocall and remind parents and community members of board meetings so they're aware if we would like to do that. But we can definitely always improve communication in a lot of ways. And I think that's something that we can be addressing on a regular basis to improve communication. As everyone knows, because of the open meeting law, board members cannot confer with one another. We cannot have a quorum outside of this public meeting. So we can't confer with one another as a whole group and say, hey, let's meet in the back room before this meeting starts and let's discuss. We can't do that. You know, due to open meeting law, this is where the discussion takes place. So I appreciate the discussion coming from everyone on the board. I think this is important and helps to make things more transparent as far as the workings of the board. And anyone who has served on a board under the open meeting law understands, boy, it would really be nice sometimes if we could confer together, just so we can get the feel of what everyone else is thinking, but that's not how it works. We have to abide by the open meeting law. All right, is there any other board items from board members? Just Cassie, make sure that we get the announcement of the opening on the board onto the next agenda from this. Okay, we will move on to item 5.1, the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. And included in the superintendent's report, we have 2 items, the construction update. If you have any questions about that, I see Casey's here, but we can certainly discuss that. And then the other item that's in there, and I just mentioned it earlier this evening, is that we have been working on creating a distance learning guide. And primarily at this point, it is to provide a structure and guidance for administrators as they are working hard right now to get schools open, where teachers are participating in professional development, and we want to give them the structures they need to be able to do their job as they open up the schools. We reviewed it with administrators this morning at a meeting and received some feedback, and continuing this as a living document. We'll continue to make modifications as things come up. Our intent is, when we get this document at where we want it to be, so that it is a helpful tool for our administrators as they're going forward, that will also provide, based on this, a distance education guide for our families and community. And of course, share it with board and with the community so that they have a structure and those supports that they need in place as they're going through this. So this is the first draft of that structure that we're putting together.
So I do have a question under, because you have the bus driver expectations in here.
And so that was my question, if we're online only, why are these bus drivers, it says special needs transportation, and you're gonna need 3 times as much capacity?
Sure, so I'm
And 3
happy-
times as many aides?
Yeah, so, I've been in talks with the NDE, and, they have been supportive in the way that they've created this process for coming up with a plan so that we can be more individualized for the needs of our communities. And one of the things, we're looking at a few different things. We're looking at the possibility of our preschool children as an example, that at that age, what's best and best practice for our little ones is not necessarily sitting in front of a computer. So we do have that flexibility of looking at a hybrid sort of model for having our little ones, our very, very little ones, coming into schools. And so that would then require transportation. We are looking at our students with, depending on their needs, this is an IEP decision and whatnot, but the services that are being provided to our students with special needs, not all of them can be provided and accounted for in the remote environment. And so we do have the latitude to be able to create situations where we can have that face-to-face so that we can provide the wraparound services that students will need. Again, that is a function of the IEP process and making those determinations, but we have to have transportation available so that the children can be transported. We have other things that we're looking at, proposals that we're taking a look at that might provide opportunities for students to come on campus. I want to under-promise and over-deliver, so I don't want to make promises about it, but in our CTE classes and environments, there may be some opportunities to have kids be able to come in sort of a hybrid model to be able to do some of those hands-on things that they just are not able to do. The remote environment wouldn't be able to support that. So as we're finding out the sort of latitude that we have, we see lots of opportunities to be able to provide experiences for our students that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do in a completely pure distance learning environment.
But that's probably not going to take our entire bus force then, with only limited amounts of children even attending, welding classes or whatever.
No, it wouldn't, but we have to also consider the social distancing rules and whatnot that goes into it. So those are still details, the granular details to work out, that the projections that are made.
And what about, didn't we hire extra, because it talks about the janitorial things here too, and didn't we hire extra janitors in when we were going with the hybrid model? Is that correct or not?
Not that I'm aware of,
no. No, okay.
We
I thought we
did
had.
hire one person assigned them to the transportation center, and the maintenance and cleaning of the transportation center itself has always been done in conjunction with staff at Elko High School in preparation for the expansion of their campus. We needed to relieve Elko High School of that responsibility, and then we also tied in some of the disinfection procedures that need to happen at the transportation with that new position.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I had a question for Casey with regards to the construction thing. It looks like the science building and the auditorium, the performing arts building is just really kicking into gear and they're getting an awful lot accomplished. Are we seeing anything with the projection date of when we're gonna be finishing? Do you think they're gonna be able to get into that building sooner rather than later?
No, we're still on this original schedule. Science building will be December, and then the performing arts will be March, April.
Okay. It looked like we finished up with the work that we were doing, the ADA work over at Carlin as well.
That is done. That is complete.
Okay. And the Wells project's looking pretty much on time?
Yep, it's about 95% done.
Okay.
I'm assuming since the construction plan is outlined year by year money-wise, that they can't move ahead now that the school is gonna be empty with completing the Wells project, correct? It would still have to wait until next year?
Yeah, phase 2 design is about 70% right now. We're looking to bid that out in December.
Okay.
All right, anything else on the superintendent's report? All right, we will move on to item 6.1, approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve.
Thank you, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
There's,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I, looking down through, I noticed that there were 3 payments going to the district's insurance fund. I think, for a total of $1 million over the 2 different, things. Are we still watching? And I thought there was a trigger that would be initiated to look at when the district was adding more money to that particular fund. As I said, there was one for $500,000, then another $250,000, and another $250,000.
In terms of the triggers built into the contract for,
Yeah, are we at that particular point? It seems like normally if we put money in there, it's usually maybe up to a 500,000. But this, putting $1 million into that fund,
yeah,
just
Jerry,
raised it.
Jerry would be a better one to ask in terms of what infusions she's making
Okay.
into the insurance program, but there are specified triggers. There
Yes,
are
and-
specified triggers within the master
Okay.
contract that
Trigger that, yeah.
that pertain to that. The thing to keep in mind is the Affordable Health Care Act caps the increases to employee premiums to 4%. And we used to do a lot more sharing of increases in insurance stuff with employees, but that ended when the Affordable Health Care Act came into being because it restricts, and really that 4% increase on premiums doesn't derive more than an anthill of funding in the big picture, so.
Yeah, the funding that we contributed, that $1 million, was all advances against the premiums for this month. We want to get those claims paid as we're nearing the end of our claim year so that we can reap all the reinsurance benefits for those. And our insurance rep and I have a meeting with Dr. Robinson this week.
So that should be pretty much taken care of, the IBNRs to finish the year off?
Well, we haven't yet calculated all the IBNRs, so I can't tell you exactly if those will be, how much those will be. I'm assuming we'll still end up with a negative fund balance in there for this year based on those, but our claims are paid up like weekly. We have to pay all of the claims. The only things we can drag out at all are the dental and vision and prescription drugs. Everything else is paid weekly.
Okay, but you still seem to think that we're gonna come up in a deficit at the end of the year?
Yes, I would be very surprised if we don't.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
The $443,000 for the tech department, is that Chromebooks and hotspots?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah, that was for laptops and hotspots, yeah.
Thank you, Mac. Any other questions from the board on the accounts payable? like to proceed?
I move to approve.
I think that we already have.
There was a motion and a second.
I apologize, my notes are not sufficient at the moment. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any abstentions? I will be abstaining as I have a family member whose employer is listed on the accounts payable. All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion carries. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for comments from the public.
I would like to make a comment. Sandy Moon from Spring Creek High School. I'm a teacher and I also have a daughter that's still attending schools in the district. And I'm with Candace. I feel that communication really needs to improve. Not only with the board, but within the district at different levels. This last week I've watched as teachers from Hawaii that I've communicated with, Jackpot, Wells, Wendover, and within our own Elko and Spring Creek. So pretty much the whole district have been very frustrated with the training that we're receiving for the online. I'm not saying that they haven't done a wonderful job. I just think that I don't know who's in charge of it, but they should have surveyed the teachers to find out what instruction we needed to be able to make these online classrooms available, because it's addressed some of it's not addressed, you know, and so there was a lot of frustration. I'm prepared because I felt that it was coming, and so I purchased stuff over the summer on my own, started training myself, and have been able to help many of my colleagues. Our administration at Spring Creek High School has been good, working with us, trying to figure out solutions. And I think these women were kind of thrown into a whirlwind of stuff because they start training us on Zoom, which the district doesn't want us to use Zoom. So we've got to use Google Meet, or we've got to use GoGuardian. Well, there's no training for that. And I think there's a lot of liability that can come into play. As we started working with it as a group, we formed a group collectively throughout the district with different teachers from different areas and started working with it. And we found out that students in the Google Meet can stay on and cause issues if we don't go in and mark on every single student to exit them out of the program. And I watched several of my colleagues cry and are ready to go get a job at Walmart because they don't feel like they can produce the things online. And some of these teachers are amazing teachers that I want my daughter to be in their classroom because they're excellent teachers. And they want to do a good job, but we're not receiving everything that we need. And so my thing is not to blame our PD people. I'm blaming that we don't have a good communication within our district. We need to counsel with one another as teachers, as administrators, as the board, as superintendent, to ask what are the needs that you have and make those lists, and then direct that instruction to the needs of the teachers so that they can provide the education to these children that they need. We've been very fortunate. We've kind of taken some time to make groups, and we're finding these answers on our own. We're going out and spending a lot of extra hours to say, hey, how do you do this? Or, you know, we've created some jam boards, which I found from the PD that was very helpful, to put up in our classrooms for our schools to say, hey, do you know how to do this? And then attach it so that say, hey, I do know how to do this. But I think if we would have had the communication, it could have been streamlined a lot better, and we could have moved at a faster pace and been even more prepared for when our students go into online. It's just sad to watch so many people struggling when they don't need to struggle. So I think that communication is a huge thing. I called today, I spent 4 hours of my day today calling parents of students that are on my list and saying, because I don't know many of them, I've had some of them in the past, calling parents and saying, hey, what are some questions and concerns that I might be able to address with regards to my class? And they said, we just need clear communication to say, hey, this is what it's gonna look like. And so I went through what it should look like from my class at this point from what I've been directed. And you know what? I have never heard so much relief in voices. They're like, well, if we would just receive that, we would be more on board. And so I think we need to have communication, especially in this time. And if we don't have it, we're gonna lose a lot. And we're gonna make these kids suffer, and we don't need that. And I'm not crying for my own daughter, I'm crying for those students that are out there. I have 180 students on my list that I want to be able to educate. I want to be able to help them, and we need to have the tools to be able to help them. And so I hope that you take into consideration how hard we're working. You know, last week at the board, before you guys had the board meeting, I had 6 parents approach me, and I felt threatened because they were reading stuff on Facebook. Like she said, there's communication that's out there that shouldn't be out there. They knew where the board was already going to talk about. And they're asking me, and I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I said, as far as I know, they're just re-meeting, and it can always change, but they went through, and it went through the agenda exactly how it was going to go with the votes and everything. And then I had to walk around my block and take people harassing me because of the things that are going on, and we shouldn't have to have that. We shouldn't have to have that. If we have clear communication, everything's going to work out, but we have to have clear communication on all levels. And it can't, you know, the one plus out of this is I feel more united with my school, and not only my school, I have now friends in Owyhee and Jackpot, some excellent educators that are struggling out there, and we're collaborating together to make these things good. And it's a wonderful thing to have those communications, and we should have those communications even in a regular year. So I'm grateful for that it forced us to go outside of our schools, outside of our own disciplines, and seek other people out for help. So I just hope that you'll start taking that into consideration and that we can get better communication in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Min. Any other comments, please?
My name is Gretchen Lutz, and I'm a teacher at Grammar Number 2, and I'm a parent of a 9th grader and a 2nd grader. I'm going to start with, many of you are aware of what happened with NNVA this weekend. As a parent, I have chosen to enroll my 2nd grader in NNVA weeks ago because I could not do the hybrid model with a 2nd grader and be responsible for teaching. I understand the logistics of scheduling. I understand the logistics of finding employment. I've been present at these meetings to hear the numbers, to hear tonight that there's approximately 400 families in an NNVA, to receive emails Saturday morning, my child's enrolled in this class, my child's enrolled in this class, and then to receive emails that we're sorry, your 1st and 2nd grader, if your child is a 1st and 2nd grader, they cannot be part of this program, and school was supposed to start yesterday. As a staff member, I didn't have a plan B for yesterday for my 2nd grader. My employer, who I work with and I take a lot of pride in, I'm embarrassed that that's the best my employer can do to communicate to one of their employees and to the citizens of Elko for our 1st and 2nd graders is an email on a Saturday. Fortunately for me, I have a little bit of an inside track because I have the school district email, and I sent some emails. I was responded to promptly. I would like to think that every parent in my shoes would have had that prompt response, but I don't know that every parent in my shoes would have known how to try to have those avenues to get a response. Fortunately, by Saturday evening, after spending most of my Saturday coming up with a plan B for my 2nd grader's education, because that comes first, my family, the problem has sort of been resolved. My child started NNVA yesterday. I know because of the influx, the workbooks are coming. I called central office today to find out just a timeline to plan because the worksheets that my 2nd grader needs, you have to be in the active module of today's lesson to print the worksheet. So I can't print them for his week of work. So I just need a little bit of a timeline. Are they on back order? They'll be here when? I was told to call the company. If you're receiving the money from the state for my 2nd grader through NNVA, Elko County is my go-to for the help. I don't need to call the company to get those kinds of answers. I called the company, I got a voicemail, and I have emailed the company. I will gladly share with any parent. Please email me as soon as I have an answer when those workbooks will be available. I'm disappointed. In NNVA, I know with the influx, and fortunately my 2nd grader was able to get in. My 2nd grader still doesn't have some teachers though assigned to him in NNVA. I'm not sure How long that's going to go on, I'm not sure who actually is communicating that. No one has communicated that to me. I just know because I'm a teacher and I'm in the program and I'm really trying to dig deep in and find out because the education is important. But he still doesn't have teachers assigned, but the program started yesterday. I think the board just needs to be aware of that because my expectations are greater. Using Zoom versus Google Classroom versus GoGuardian is a concern I have because I don't know what direction to go. And when our training was modeled in Zoom, that's what I've been using for the last several days. That's what I'm most familiar with out of those 3 programs, and that is the program for whatever reason we're not able to use, unfortunately. I hear a lot of frustration with colleagues regarding that. I was hoping tonight at the board meeting we would be given, or the board would approve some kind of guiding document for both parents and teachers. Today I spent a good part of the day researching online other districts that do have these guiding documents. One, I would love for my first grade students, what are the expectations of number of minutes? We keep asking at our school and we keep getting told we're waiting for that information to come back to us, we're not sure. I cannot plan what the next several weeks online are going to be if I don't know what the expectations are of how many minutes live, how many minutes online, how many minutes of work are expected. We've been given and shared, and I've gone out and looked at other districts, so I'm sure what Elko comes up with will be something comparable, but we need those guiding documents from Elko County because that's where we're at from somebody. I'm not sure exactly where those guiding documents are coming from, but in order to move forward with our planning, that would be very much appreciated. There also, this week I have reached out, my 14-year-old who now is online. I'm not leaving my 14-year-old home alone 5 days a week. And I reached out first to my principal, just finding out the channels. Will we be able to work from home some of the time? I'm not asking to work from home all the time. She does not need a babysitter, but 5 days a week, 8 to 4, a 14-year-old at home is not okay for any student in Elko County. And are there any options to work from home? I was directed to check with Mike. And at this time, Mike has shared with me that that is not an option. I'm letting the board know if that's not an option for some of us that do have families I'm not allowed to bring my 14-year-old on campus to sit in my classroom, or I'm the only person in that room. I will be taking days without pay to be with my own child because my family does come first. And I'm sorry to my students and my parents up front right now, but I'm not leaving a 14-year-old 5 days a week unsupervised at home. And I think in these kinds of circumstances, yes, this is developing quickly, but we have a lot of staff in Elko County that does have children. And I think those kinds of needs, the communication piece is completely being overlooked, avoided. No one wants to make the decision, and that's been very clear. And again, I'm disappointed in my employer. I became a teacher in Elko County. I've been here. This is my 21st year. I'm proud to be a teacher. I love my job. That's the only reason I'm back, is I love my job. I love what I do, but my own children come first, and my colleagues' children, they need to come first for them. So I hope Elko can rise to the occasion and address some of these needs and take care of our families, because if we don't have that, then what we're doing in our classroom is not going to be good. And that leads me just to this one last little piece. The mental health statistics of children not attending school, you all know what they are. I don't have to speak to them. Grammar is now sharing a counselor with Southside. I find that kind of ironic in a time when mental health really needs to be focused on, because as an employee of the school, that counselor at our school also does carry a piece of the mental health of our staff. we see students with issues and problems, that counselor is so critical in helping all of us meet the mental health needs of our students. And I think the district really needs to look at putting that as a priority down the road to making sure that the schools have full-time counselors available to them, because that mental health piece is only getting larger. It's not being reduced because we're online. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Please.
I don't know what the NNBA thing is.
Northern Nevada Virtual Academy.
No, what the issue is. I know Gretchen indicated that we know, but I don't know. And then I thought I saw today that, didn't PDE send us a document that had different times listed for age groups?
Yeah, I think Mr. McEnany can fill the board in.
So, Jean Morrison and Maria Frank have been working pretty much around the clock, including weekends. They put in a 16-hour day on Saturday. And Saturday morning, they were informed by our curriculum provider, Edgenuity, that Edgenuity had run out of teachers in their program in certain content areas. Those content areas were the core classes. So at about 9 o'clock Saturday morning, we were informed by them that we could no longer enroll any more students within Edgenuity, and any student who did not have a full 6-lesson course load was not meeting Nevada standard at that time. So when we're talking about cores, it would be math, English, science, and social studies that all of those kids have to be enrolled in, and they ran out of social studies and math teachers. So obviously, we're not going to enroll a child in a program where they can't learn math. That's just not acceptable. So I contacted Dr. Robinson, I informed her of the issue. We talked it out, and we decided that we were going to send an email that effectively waitlisted any students who were not fully enrolled at that time, while we worked with our partner to try to figure out a workaround to this issue. At that time, some parents contacted us and unenrolled and said, when we can affect that unenrollment for you if you would like to go back to your regular school. But other than that, again, in the email that I wrote out, it was that students were waitlisted. By the end of Saturday, in working in conjunction with Edgenuity, we discovered a workaround to that problem, ensuring that all of our students were then going to be enrolled in classes with Nevada licensed teachers in those core subject areas. Now, due to that fact, we had to delay enrolling some of those kids in those classes while Edgenuity got those teachers licensed and up to speed in the program. However, we didn't want to delay the enrollment knowing that we were going to have those classes available within 2 days. So we activated students in their classes so they could go and partake in the 4 or 5 classes that we did have them actively enrolled in with teachers, knowing that within a day or 2, that other class would be activated. As of today, every student in an MBA is enrolled in all of their courses through this work with our department and Edgenuity. So it was a catastrophic problem at 9 a.m. Saturday morning that required an immediate reaction plan that we then spent the next 8 hours figuring out and getting to where we are today. So I can only applaud my staff, Maria and Jeannie, on the work that they did Saturday and Sunday to solve that problem. They did an excellent job.
And Mr. McEnany, if a parent has a concern with, one of our on-campus schools, they can contact their teacher, they can contact their principal. Who do they contact for the virtual academy?
Me.
Okay.
I am the principal of the virtual academy, so everyone's willing to, and trust me, based on my email, people know that. That's why they get emails from me when things like this happen. And as far as the workbook concerned, those workbooks, again, they're coming from Edgenuity. They have all been ordered, and they are moving at the speed of the post office as we speak. So there's no need to reach out to I don't know who told you that, and if someone did tell you that when you called in, I apologize for them.
So they have been shipped.
That is our understanding. That is the message we have gotten from Edgenuity. And while we were sitting here, I received an email from Jean Morrison, who was watching, and assured me that they have shipped. So again, with the late influx of kiddos, you have to order those in bulk. with the massive enrollment we had, we ordered large amounts of them, and then with the massive unenrollments we had, we will have Edgenuity workbooks for those classes for several years to come, that we will have to store at the warehouse, but that's okay.
We're prepared. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Please, Gretchen.
Can I just ask you, Mr. McEnany, even though my son is enrolled, we don't have teachers assigned to us in some of his classes?
That
So-
is the issue I just spoke to with they're getting, Edgenuity is getting those teachers activated as we speak. And as soon as those teachers come available, those teachers, it'll start. But we didn't want to delay in the classes that you did have access.
I'm just curious why the district waited until a Saturday, 2 days before the program was to begin to enroll the students into the program. It would seem more likely that the enrollment process, I enrolled my son the morning the district opened it. It wasn't like I was a last minute, one of the last people to sign him up for the program. So I'm just curious why you waited until a Saturday, 2 days before the program begins to get the kids placed in the program.
We didn't, that's been an active process for more than 4 weeks. Again, when we started enrollment, please keep in mind that at the beginning, we had over 800 students in there. And with that massive enrollment and getting those kids in there and then removing them as they left, it was a working down the list. And unfortunately, some students, they were still working on right up until the 11th hour.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right. We'll move to item 8.1, adjournment of the meeting.
Is the,
Oh, please.
the online comments?
Please, if you would like to address some of those, I was going to say the board is able to read all of those. Mr. Wines, if you'd like to address some of those, absolutely, go
I
ahead.
just wondered if we were gonna read them, or if
Where
there
do
was
we
90
read
of
those
them, I
at?
wasn't gonna bring it up, but there's not very many of them.
If we've got a short list and you'd like to take the time, go for it. If not, everyone's aware that those comments will be in the board minutes, and all the board members can see those, and if you have concerns about how to get to those, Mr. Walls can help you work through that process of how to get to those comments. So, Mr. Wines, would you like to read them? Have you?
I've read through them.
Is there anything new that has not been addressed that you came across? Because I didn't see anything new when I read through them.
No.
Okay. All right. Again, we just appreciate people submitting comments and know that the board does look at those, and those all appear in the official minutes. Okay. Any other comments from the public? All right. We'll move on to item 8.1, adjournment of the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you again for attending with us, and we look forward to the next meeting in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful night.